Welcome back to Boulder View. Joining us today is the city's Urban Wildlife Coordinator, Val Matheson. Val's here to talk to us about bears and mountain lions in and around the city limits and what the city's role is to help manage that. Thanks for being here today, Val.
Happy to be here.
So I think it's no surprise to most people that living this close to the foothills, we see a lot more large animal interactions. And it being spring, we're probably going to start hearing a lot more about sightings for bears and mountain lions. I know recently you were at the City Council talking about what the city's supposed to do with bears and mountain lions in and around the city limits. Can you tell us more about what the purpose of, what's City Council's role or what's the city's role in managing bears and mountain lions?
Sure. We went to City Council because we're in the process of developing the bear and mountain lion management plan. It's part of the Urban Wildlife Management Plan. It's one chapter of it, and we're at the middle phase. So we've already, the first phase was identifying issues, which we did last year, and now we're working on the analysis, or what can we do about those issues. And that's why we went to council, to get some feedback and direction on what we can do with this Urban Wildlife Management Plan.
So they didn't adopt a formal plan yet. They were just giving direction.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't, and we're hoping to have a plan by the fall of this year. But now that we've gotten that direction on what to do with it, we're going to start drafting it in the next few months.
So you said it's part of the Urban Wildlife Management Plan. So right now you're just looking at bears and mountain lions, but what do we mean by urban wildlife? Is that all animals or just mammals, or?
Yeah, it's basically the mammals we see in town, and it ranges from the large bears and mountain lions and deer to raccoons and fox and things we see in town. And we have an Urban Wildlife Management Plan. That vision was identified or accepted by council back in 2006, and one component, which was prairie dogs. And so now we're going to develop the rest of the plan based on what's happening in the city and our highest priorities, which right now is black bear and mountain lions.
Oh, interesting. So black bear and mountain lions are higher priority than prairie dogs right now?
Well, now we have the prairie dog management plan, so at least we have a plan that we're implementing, and so we're developing our next plan. They're both still pretty important in town, don't get me wrong.
And then what comes next?
We don't know, and after we have this developed, there's talk. Deer have been a challenge, a safety issue, and maybe something we could think about more broadly, or other municipalities are developing coyote management plans, so we're not really sure what the next plan is. We're just sort of working on our timeline for black bear and mountain lion now. So
if bear and mountain lion are pretty high priority, they're one or two, right? What makes them such a big priority, and like what is the issue that brought this up?
Yeah, so what we really identified as issues for, they're different. For black bear, it is one, they have a history of getting in trash in the city of Boulder, and since 2003 we've had about 6 black bear destroyed in the city, and about 12 relocated. And we know that bear are getting into trash constantly. So what we're trying to do with bear is think about, why are they in town? What are they getting into? And how can we be better stewards? Or what can we do that's proactive to keep them out of trash that's not healthy for them, and also out of the city where they can come into conflicts with people and are in danger of being destroyed?
So I hear trash, and I know there was talk about, are we going to require bear-proof trash containers? But is trash what is it about the trash-bear interactions we really don't like? Is it that we don't like the trash spread all over, or is it a safety concern?
It's a lot of different things. I think what we're really working with here is a community value that the residents of Boulder value wildlife, and they don't want harm to come to wildlife. So there's one aspect that it's not good for bears to be eating trash, and we find aluminum foil and cellophane in scat, or that's left behind. We don't want them sick. We also don't want them destroyed, and if the Division of Wildlife determines that a bear is a nuisance or a public safety concern, it can be destroyed. And though they work very hard for that not to happen, in the city that's an issue. We also don't want trash sprayed around, and we don't want the potential for public safety to be compromised because of these big mammals being in town. So there's a lot of reasons why it's not a good idea to have them in town.
So you mentioned the Department of Wildlife, the DOW, might have to get rid of a bear if it's a safety concern. I've always heard the 3 strikes rule. Is that a real rule?
You know, so it's, I can't really speak to, you know, the division's policies, but they do, they will ear tag a bear that's been a problem and relocate it. And if that bear comes back or is again an issue, it will be destroyed. And I know there's a variety of tools in their toolbox as to how they will address or work with an animal that's a nuisance or a public safety concern. Mm-hmm. But in general, you know, we sort of think when a bear's relocated that, you know, oh great, it was, you know, the problem's dissolved. But the truth is when a bear's been relocated, there's a pretty high probability that it's going to get into some kind of trouble somewhere else once it's been habituated to eating trash and getting into food it shouldn't be eating.
You mentioned the DOW, and I imagine we work with them a lot to help mitigate animals.
Yeah.
So what is the city's role? If the DOW is doing the relocating and the euthanizing, if that's important, or in the tracking, what is the city doing?
Yeah, it's a really good point because it's confusing when we say the city's working on a wildlife management plan, and it's an important point that the Division of Wildlife is responsible for actually directly managing those animals. So you're completely right, they're the ones that do the relocation. What the city's role is, and I would say also the community's role is trying to think about how can we avoid these potential conflicts? What can we do before anything happens that makes a conflict less likely? And that's really what this plan is about. How can we manage our trash better for bear? But for mountain lions, something that's come up is, you know, people are surprised or say, if I'd known that a mountain lion would come into my backyard on 6th Street and take my small dog, I wouldn't have gotten a small dog. And so there's definitely need for more information and awareness so that people understand that these animals are in town and what the impacts of having them are.
Right, so you mentioned mountain lions, and I was just going to move us over to mountain lions because it seems like the attractants for mountain lions is very different than bears. You never hear of a mountain lion getting into trash.
Right.
So what are the attractants for mountain lions? Small pets?
Right, I mean, that's one of them. We assume for the most part they're coming in town for prey, but there are other urban features that are also inviting to mountain lions. You know, we live in an arid environment, and a lot of backyards have water features like ponds and waterfalls, and so resources that might be more hard to come by in general in natural areas might be easy to come by in a backyard. So primarily deer is what they're eating, but raccoons, fox, pets like cats and dogs, prey in general, and they're opportunistic, so they're you know, there's been a great study with the Division of Wildlife collaring them, and we are getting a little bit more information about what they're doing. But generally, lions are spending most of their time in natural areas and then sort of doing a swoop through town. And if there's, you know, water or pets or a deer in a right spot at the right time, they'll take advantage of that.
So are mountain lions like bears in that if they find one place that works for them, they'll come back to that one place, or are they just kind of traveling around?
You know, it seems different. That lions, you know, have this large, or at least the lions that have been collared have a very large range, and as I said, spending a lot of time in a natural area and sort of spending less time just sort of going through town and taking advantage of any food resource. But we do see more with bears that we'll have a bear that will be coming down in the season and keep coming down and keep coming down, and once they're rewarded, it's harder, particularly in years where there's not a lot of food in the natural areas, to get the bear to go back and forage in natural habitat.
So it also seems like, I guess from what I heard with community members who were speaking at the last council meeting, there seems to be more fear around the mountain lion, and I don't know if that's warranted or not in your opinion, but people seem to fear an attack from a mountain lion more than they do from a bear, and that's just my perception. I don't know if that's true.
That seems to be the case. It seems that there's a lot more fear associated with lions than with bears, although there have been, I think, 2 people in Colorado killed by mountain lions and a similar number, maybe even one more, same ballpark, by bear. There's certainly a perception, I think, though, that lions, because they're predators and they prey on animals, that it could be their 2-year-old next, and that's certainly a possibility. The chance is really minuscule. It's really rare that lions prey on people, but it's possible.
So what is the what's the city doing or the Department of Wildlife doing to help ease that fear or communicate about the study? Is there any communication going on?
I mean, that's one aspect that came up in the issues, is that people do want more information, and the Division of Wildlife and the city has a huge education effort in talking to school groups and kids and adult groups about lion and bear biology and what to do if you see one and how to make your home more safe. So both departments are very active in education. Something that we identified in the issues in developing this plan is we could do more with getting that information out to people in the form of a website or in outreach, just so that people aren't surprised that a lion was sighted at Iris and 30th or some of these areas that there's, I think, a perception that they're kind of staying to the west, where really they are moving through the city.
So is there a website available, or
so
tools
right
now, or that's what you're working on?
We are working on it. We have a website that's www.boulderwildlifeplan.net, where we are now putting up some of that information. The division worked on bear and lion frequently asked questions about bears and lions in Boulder that we have posted, as well as a map of activity. And that's really where our point of information is going to be, or resource. But once our plan is done, we'll develop that a little bit more.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to get that website out. And are there any other last-minute quick tips you can give?
I think one, just sort of emphasizing that the bottom line here in working on these plans is we're never going to get rid of bear and lion, and we're really working to figure out how can we live with them better.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for being here today. That's about all the time we have.
Thanks. It was great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up another episode of A Boulder View. For all of us here at Channel 8, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.